What happened to broadcast that put it in this less than competitive position? What is your opinion on that?
Fractionalization. I mean, that's it. You know, people think that the death of television is the DVR, but it's not. I mean, in my view, the thing that's the most challenging is fractionalization, and by that I just mean that there is just so many places for people to go to consume video right now that the ability to aggregate, the kind of large audiences that many advertisers need is becoming, very, very hard to do. I mean, just to give you an example, Nielsen measures over 900 entities now on a regular basis. I mean, that's, now a lot of them are things that are kind of small and local, but the fact of the matter is that's what's out there. And when I started looking at that metric a few years ago, it was 300, and then it grew to 500, and now it's 900, and I'm sure in a year it's going to go over 1,000. So, if that's just an indication of how people can go to a zillion different places to watch television, it just becomes a very difficult thing for a medium like broadcast network TV, which its model is built entirely on aggregating huge numbers of people. It's just getting very, very difficult to do it. It's possible. I mean, we know the pipes work, as Jeff Zucker said, because when we have the Olympics and when we have 215 million people watch it, you know that certain events can do that. I mean, this season, for example, football is the biggest hit on television. But again, those events are extraordinarily expensive. They're not, kind of regular programming. And frankly, if you look at it, regular programs on broadcast TV are pretty challenged. I mean, this season so far, it's really hard to say that there was any kind of, at least initially, breakout hit. And I'm not, being critical. I'm simply saying I think it's a reflection of how hard it is to develop and launch network programs that deliver the kind of network-size audiences that we've been accustomed to in the past. And I don't think that's going to get any easier.
And yet, broadcast still has arguably the biggest reach of any media.
No question. And, when you're an advertiser and you want to make a big statement, when you want to sort of bring out a new brand, when you want to sort of basically reach a lot of people simultaneously for some sort of a marketing or promotional event, network TV is the only place to go. I mean, I've often said that if network TV didn't exist, companies like Procter & Gamble would have to invent us, because a lot of their marketing effort is designed to reach a lot of people in a very short period of time, and that's something you can't do when you sort of aggregate it over cable, let's say. But I mean, I think what's happening is that while network TV is clearly not as efficient as it used to be, it's still the biggest game in town, and there's no question that from a cultural standpoint, more people still share network programs than they do cable. But the fact is that cable is maturing in the sense that there's an awful lot of stuff on cable now that is taking on the kind of cultural relevance that network used to have as its own preserve. So you can look at anything, whether it's Housewives series on Bravo, or whether it's Mad Men, or there's just a lot of things. Royal Pains on USA. These are all programs that are beginning to kind of have a cultural significance, which then of course equates into ratings and into sales. That is getting close to what networks had as their kind of own province. So I just think that there's a huge kind of shift in what's going on. I think that the Jay Leno show, and it's been very controversial, as you know, and by the way, I think, from our point of view, very successful. But I mean, that was a recognition. People misunderstood that. There were many, many reasons to do that. But one reason that we thought it was worth doing and would be successful was the fact that it was basically a reflection of how people were consuming broadcast network TV in today's media environment, as opposed to how they were consuming it even 5 years ago.
The Jay Leno show is an interesting point. 10 o'clock used to be the time for high-quality drama on broadcast. You knew that you could get an LA Law or a Hill Street Blues, and sure, I'm dating myself. But in going with Leno, isn't then broadcast taking a cable tact?
To some extent, yes, but I think that broadcast was taking the cable tact even before Leno. If you think about it, over the past few years, all the broadcast networks were essentially replaying programs on Friday, Saturday night. I mean, the cable approach is actually a pretty smart one. I mean, what cable decided to do years ago, and this even predates the DVR, was to say to the audience, instead of having to show up when we tell you to, 10 o'clock Wednesday night, we're going to put that show on 10 o'clock Wednesday, but it'll also be on Thursday in the afternoon and on Friday, you know, and then we're going to do a marathon, and we're going to sort of be anywhere you're going to be. And it was more like giving people the opportunity to catch up on programs at their schedule. Whereas the networks had always been, this is what it's going to be. If you miss it, you know, you're kind of out of luck. Now, the DVR has begun to change that, but the basic model of cable, you know, one of the models, it has a lot of different, you know, aspects to it, was the idea of making it very easy for viewers to find a program, not just its initial broadcast. So, you know, that began a few years ago. I mean, what Leno did was, I mean, in stripping, it basically is saying that, you know, I mean, well, here's the reason that we thought this made a lot of sense. I looked at the share of audience at 10 o'clock watching television, and I found that about a little less than 25% of the audience that was watching TV at 10 o'clock was watching any of the three networks that were broadcasting at 10, which meant to me that 75% of the people using TV at that time were not interested in the procedurals, you know, the medical dramas, you know, whatever it was that the three networks were offering. That included us at the time. And it also occurred to us that Leno is a unique phenomenon. I mean, if you live on this planet, you know who Jay Leno is. And he's the kind of program that people sort of like to dip into and out. I never thought that people would sort of start watching Leno and would be Leno viewers every single night for the rest of their lives, Monday through Friday. I always felt he would be the kind of thing where, you know, you wouldn't really have something you wanted to see that night. You check out Jay's monologue. People always like that. Kind of DVR proof because they want to see it, you know, the same day that things happen. Some nights you'll stay, some nights you won't, some nights you'll come in at 10:30. So I think there's going to be a huge amount of circulation throughout that show. I don't think there's going to be this very large core audience, but I think that because he's somebody who, as you're scanning through the dial, you know who this guy is, immediately it's an anchor where you could stop, and because the nature of the show is it's very joinable. It's the kind of program that I think, you know, is going to represent a new way people will be looking at TV then. You know, so far it's proven to be the case. I actually think he's only going to do better once the sampling and some of the new episodes of the season, you know, play out. And so, I mean, to me, the real time to look at Leno's performance is going to be sort of in early December when, you know, pretty much the first runs shut down. They're all in repeats, and Leno's going to be, you know, live. But he's been, you know, he's actually been producing ratings that are exceeding our estimates even now, and I think it's a very tough time period. I mean, you know, in terms of people seeing all the new programs and their favorite shows are coming back and stuff like that. So stay tuned.